Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. My name's Mel DeWeese, and I have been researching AI systems and diving in as quickly and as heavily as I can while I can still use. It was originally my plan was to use Fable for the next, about week or so, but now that we don't have access to that, I am and I've already paid for that membership for this month. And so I'm furiously trying to build out as much of my pipelines as I can, as quickly as I can, so that I can set myself up, hopefully at least for the next year, on being able to have the resources that I need to finish out the projects, at least the ones that I have on deck right now. So, with that, I will be reviewing some of the steps that I went through in building this system and why I'm building it this way. And most importantly, really aiming to go as local and ownership based as I can. And I recently had someone make a comment that they wanted me to talk more about the ownership economy. Because in one of my latest videos, I had mentioned that I really am in hopes that this crash of the subscription models will bring people to ownership and ownership economy and seeing the value in ownership. Because over the last however many decades, we've been programmed to rent everything. And yes, economically, sometimes renting something is better, just like how sometimes leasing a Mercedes is more economical than perhaps buying one. But in this a new age where we're going into, that I believe where value will be the primary driver, is it's not always going to be about what's the fanciest. It will be about, yeah, you can have fancy, but does it bring value? Does it have utility as well? And that's where the real beauty comes in. And when there's something like that, you want to own it, right? If you could go out and buy a Mercedes today and know that it could last you for the next 20 years, yeah, you'd want to own it. But if you're thinking about buying a car and you know it's only going to last 3 years, you don't really want to own it. You're like, okay, yeah, let's lease this thing because it's going to have problems and I'm not going to keep it long term. So this non-committal um, brainwashing or programming or societal pressures, the norms, societal norms, what the I was going to get in the capophatic and apophatic mindset, but whether you're taking your beats from a leader, from an authority figure, rather than looking at all of the information. What is all of the information? What are all of my options? And instead of just taking this authority's word for it, that's telling me this is the way to go and that rental economy is the best economy, why don't I just look at all my options and figure out what works best for me? Yeah, okay, maybe the experts believe that it's best for everybody else, but maybe it's just not best for me. And walking down that path and pursuing all options. And as you pursue options, you begin to realize that there's more options than you realized when you were originally pursuing. And I am hopeful that as people realize that the new Anthropic model is going to cost them $10,000 a month if they want to have that high of a level executive in their army of AI agents, that they will have to pay a big bill for it. And although it may be less expensive than a $360,000 executive person, it still will not be affordable for the average everyday small business owner or the entrepreneur or the artist. And I believe that this gap will accelerate the open source community. I think that people will begin to realize the value of having their own hardware, having their own crypto wallets, having their own private information held away from the system, away, whatever the system means to you, like the internet, the cloud, Web3, fill in the blank, right? and taking ownership and responsibility for your own very personal private information. Now, in my ideal scenario, I would love to have everything I do offline, but there's a gap there. It's too expensive. I'd probably have to spend like $100,000 on this big server thing. And then me trying to figure out how to make all that work would probably take another at least a year. I bet if I had it, I could figure it out. I bet I could. It's like one of those things like, if they gave you a Ferrari, like, do I know exactly like how to drive it when I first get in? No, but I could figure it out. Like, I know I could figure it out, right? So, when given the resources, I could definitely figure it out. But most of us won't have that opportunity and won't be given those resources. So, in that scenario, I just believe that people are really going to have to turn to local and at least consider what percentage of their personal operations and business operations that they will have to keep local, not just for security reasons. It's almost like the security reasons are just a bonus. It's really has to come down to costs at this point, because like I said, I think it's going to cost like 10 grand just to have one operator, and then it depends on how many projects that one's operating and reviewing. And I know this thing can move like $50 per second or something, or at least $50 per minute. I'm sorry, not per second, per minute. Is pretty impressive. But they have in the future, and the Anthropics and the OpenAIs will have no incentive to slow that down. If people are willing to pay, if the billionaires, if there's enough of them that are willing to pay that $50 a minute, then okay, well, what's the next leg up? Is it 100? Like, it never stops. And at some point, to me, it reminds me of the Tower of Babylon. Okay, so they're going down one path. We're building all the data centers, all the equipment for just, and up and up and up and up. And it almost doesn't even really matter which direction everybody's building in. They're just building up towards the heavens to be closer to God, right? And at some point, it all falls down, it all crumbles. And it's just not a sustainable model with that technology. Now they're probably going to come out with some quantum I know their quantum chips are here, and they're figuring out how to use all that, and I'm sure technology will break and will evolve and all of that. But my analogy is just to drive home a point. So imagine they're over there building and just stacking. At some point that tower will fall down, and if we remain in control of our own data and building out our own systems that we own, whatever happens to them over there doesn't affect us as much. It will likely affect everyone on some level, again, depending on the percentage that you're relying on them. But my point is, starting at 10% of your data offline, I think, is a great goal for anyone who's curious about local and ownership and the ownership economy. And my point in saying the ownership economy is just the economy that realizes the value of long-term investments. Building a house that will stand for more than 10 years, right? You're building a house. When a craftsman builds a house and they put their heart and soul into it, they pass it down through their family for generations and generations. I mean, look at castles. Castles were built with legacy in mind. And I think a lot of people are building today with zero legacy in mind. It's all about how fast and how cheaply can we get the thing up. And if the big bad wolf comes along and blows down this house one day, I won't be in it, so I don't care. Right? So just building with more care and responsibility and legacy in mind is the ownership economy. So getting on to my silly little system over here, and I apologize that I am not equipped to do this. I'm not trained in any way on AI, but I'm just out here in the frontier trying to figure shit out. And I built Agent HQ, an operating system for AI agents. And once again, my number one objective in this whole AI space was, just go to Discord. Just go to Telegram. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Telegram, like that guy, didn't he get chased down by the government of Spain or the government of France and have to relinquish all this data, and they, it became like an outlaw. It was like this whole thing, and now they have backdoor, like all these places have backdoors to that system, and not that they don't tell every system, but my point is, I was saying, well, I don't want to go through any system, right? For these reasons, because if that can get in there, who else can get in there? And if I want to be able to do certain things on my personal system, I want it to remain personal. And why shouldn't I be able to use AI offline, right? Why should it have to be through the internet? Why is everybody insisting that I go through the internet to access this thing, right? So, since I didn't know any better and I'm just a princess, I just insisted that this thing build out an operating system for me, and it did. And so we've been through several iterations of it. And I started out with one agent, and then I built two to, because if you're going to have a multi-agent system, you need more than one agent to test it out. And from there, I tried to designate different types of tasks to different agents, and that worked for a little bit. They were able to build out a content engine, which is basically just a presentation engine. It's not a real full-blown content engine like some of these creators are doing. Some of these creators, they do a small prompt and it goes through a pipeline where it creates a outline for the presentation, and then the pictures and the prompts for the pictures, and then it generates the pictures and puts it all together, and then does a voiceover in that creator's voice and plugs in an avatar with like a HeyGen or something similar. And the agent can even go onto YouTube with an API key and post the YouTube for them. It's really very, very minimal input from the creator. And I'm not doing any of that. That's one reason why I come on here and I've got, messed up hair and let a lot of my mistakes show up in my videos, because I want to be overtly human. I am overtly human. I think we're in an age where it will be important for all of us to be overtly human and celebrate our humanness and our humanity. So, next slide is really going over the inventory where we started. We had 16 projects, 3 finished and 10 were stalled, which with 60 to 80% complete. This is when I was hitting a wall, I guess you could say, where I was just realizing the output was not a high enough quality to finish the majority of the projects in a consistent way that was up to my standards. So I went through and I just wanted to have more division among all of the agents and definitive roles for each agent and departments and really specialties. And really, probably what will end up happening is there'll be an orchestrator for each department. And one thing I'm realizing about this is you are the orchestrator, okay, especially in the beginning, and I still am. And then you orchestrate to a certain degree. And then at some point you replace that orchestration, a layer of that orchestration, to another agent or to 4 other agents, let's say. And then you come back and now you're orchestrating on a different level, and then you kind of replace that. Okay, so there are stages to this. Take it easy, think it through. Everyone's org chart will look different. So I've got the human, and then I'm going to the orchestrator. But the key trick for a local system, the hierarchy lives in the paperwork, context packets, review assessment, escalation rules, while the actual agent calls run flat through one dispatcher. Simple, cheaper, and debuggable. Security sits inside the software as a blocking guide. Nothing deploys without sign-off recorded. And I do have different machines for different security levels. So I have one machine that's just like all marketing stuff. Like it can do image gen and voice, 11 Labs kind of stuff going on over there. And puts presentations together and things like that. So those sorts of things I don't have as high of security on because they're going to end up here on YouTube anyway. And then I have a server that is for private information. And then I have my personal PC that has absolutely no AI on it at all. And I have another laptop as well on the system. I have another computer that I haven't added it yet because I just haven't had time. And quite frankly, I have enough room still. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to try to milk everything, to use what I have for now, and then add that when it comes up if I hit a constraint there. So small local models are specialists. One thing that I am learning is that you have different types of local models. Some local models can specialize in security. Some local models can specialize in customer service. Some local models can specialize in law. So you can choose your data set and you can choose different parameters to really hone in your agent to be a specialist just for that one task and run it on a small local model. So when I first got into this, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to get this computer and have this just one big, awesome local model. And that, I believe, is because we've been programmed to think of these frontier models. Okay, so everybody's addicted to this lazy mindset of I type in 5 words and I get what I want. Okay. And although there is a use case for it, it can be useful, the local system will likely run better if you segment it out and really try to specialize your agents to exactly what you want it for. So it becomes a specialist on that one thing, and that one thing fits the model size and fits the personality of the agent. I don't know if personality is the right term, but it seems to be one that a lot of people use. Okay. So the frontier models, the cloud models, the ones that all of us are used to. And another thing I've noticed is in the open source community, there are a ton of really brilliant minds out there, but they're coming at AI from the ground up. A lot of these people have been involved with building local for a very long time, and they already inherently, like, a lot of this stuff is very obvious to them. But when you're someone like me and you're coming from the other side where you're used to having one agent do everything, or have that frontier cloud model delegating it out on their end to bring things back to you, to show it to you, to show you the end product, they're kind of doing it for you on the back end. And so we're coming at from that place where we're used to just having the one and having things delegated out for us. And now we're learning the different delegation processes. So I think that a lot of us that are coming from using the frontier models need to really start to see how a lot of these local models are built out and which ones are the best and which ones will fit your use case the closest. And like I said, a lot of it comes down to thinking about exactly what that agent is for. Don't just spin up agents to spin up agents. I know it looks really cool when all these guys have all these cool, huge trees, and this one's, it's glowing and it's doing all these things. Don't just build agents to build agents. And also you will find as you build local, your space is very valuable. So you don't want to be cluttering it up. So one thing I noticed was here I was with these 10 unfinished projects. 3 of them were finished. 10 of them were either 60 to 80% finished. And it wasn't for lack of effort or me communicating what I wanted. And I would try to write more detailed plans, and I try to really spell it out for Hermes or for OpenClaw, and it just wasn't performing. And then I took a look back at my content engine and I thought, well, my content engine is consistently having an output. And so maybe I just need to think in a machine or a engine sort of way, because that's what I call it. I call it an engine. Other people call it a pipeline. You can have a factory line for one output, and you have an intake, parse, outline, a generate, a build, a quality gate, deploy, and then notify. So these are different steps that you can go through. So for instance, an intake would be me emailing my agent my notes on the presentation I want to make. and it goes over to a small model, and that small model parses it, and it sends it over to a mid-size model to create an outline. And then that model, when the outline's done, sends it over to a stronger model to generate that proposal. And then it gets built off of pure code because I use HTML. I like HTML presentations. And then it has a quality gate, a code reviewer. Then it gets deployed with a live URL over to me in an email, and I get notified with a link in my email or with the HTML file attached. Okay. So that is a operating process for a presentation. And so as I looked at all of my projects, I thought, what other pipeline could I build that would assist me in completing all of these projects? And I decided that a software engine would be the most valuable to me since I want to build all my own shit and I don't like a lot of software out there because every step is checked before the next one begins. So having processes that have checkpoints and have a pass or fail is very important. So the agent writes a plan and then they have a validator, and if it gets rejected, it gets logged, and then it acts on approval plans only. Model never holds the key. Okay, language model can be persuaded, confused, or just simply wrong. So what happened before we got organized into pipelines was the project lived in chat sessions, and finding it could mean hours of archaeology. And tasks for the humans hid inside documents, silently blocked work. And so it would be difficult to find, they'd say, oh, we have this constraint. I'm like, where's the constraint? Oh, we put it over here. And then I go and have to find it. So security reviews were advisory, things shipped unreviewed. Model choices were defaults and vibes, agent prompts, edited ad hoc versions, no tests. The registry makes work visible. The action center makes obligations visible. The gates make risk visible, and the quality logs make model performance visible. And so now we have a build registry and an action center, local first models and agent containers, version bundles, prompt examples, schemas, a definition of done. A definition of done. Knowing what done looks like, because the agent may just go on and on and on and on forever, or the two of them, if you have them working together, might just keep going and going and going. So hard cap 3 builds at once, or sometimes they just stop. Like they just go back and forth like one time. They're like, okay, yeah, we talked. Like, you're doing it, right? And they think the other one's doing something and the other one didn't do anything. They just talked about it. That's fun too. So the shape of the system. So the shape of systems decide how it behaves. There are 3 ways. These are just 3 general ways. I'm just here to go over some of just give you some food for thought when you're thinking about your local system. 3 ways to wire any organization: a pipeline, a tree, a mesh. They're the 3 same choices a CEO makes drawing an org chart. Structure is not neutral. So that's one of the really nice things about breaking it down into a system is it removes the guessing for the agents in a lot of cases. A system's wiring diagram is its behavior diagram. The shape you give it has already decided how fast it will move, how it fails, and who is accountable when it does. A line has a single break that stops everything. A tree has a root that can't go down. A mesh has coordination that gets expensive. None of that is in the spec. It's in the shape. So the org chart and the architecture are the same drawing. How your people are wired to talk becomes how your software is wired to run. Design one and you're designing the other, whether you meant to or not. So picking a org chart was the way that I thought about this, because even if it comes down to architecture in a software developing software. It's going to come down to the same ideas, same principles, breaking it down into simple, easy to understand steps. Just similar to when you are hiring an employee. You don't just go out and go to the corner and have a sign and say, I'm going to hire anyone. You have a certain idea of the type of person that you want to fit that role. And the same thought should go into developing an agent. Maybe it's not you developing each and every agent, but definitely making sure that you are being clear with your AI that you do want to incorporate local models that are specifically fine-tuned and trained with data sets that are specific to the role and budget friendly to the role. Okay. And almost every structure ever drawn is one of these three or a blend. Each has a characteristic motion. Watch how information moves and you've understood the shape. So the assembly line. So this is one type of system. Starts one, goes to the next, goes to the next. And I highly recommend you design at least one, even if you can't think of anything. Just do a presentation pipeline. Okay, so instead of going over to Claude and saying, give me a presentation on this, here's my bullet points, build your own pipeline with your local system. And that is a good first step because it's a presentation. You're planning on sharing it with everyone. There's no private information in there. You don't have to worry. If it's something that you are going to be sharing publicly anyway, use your local system and learn from all of that and iterate and learn what happens when you iterate. And then you will start to understand how things can be broken and fixed and put back together better. So what works in one direction through specialized stages, each stage does exactly one job and hands the result to the next. So you're not having to deal with if this, then that, or if X is the result, send it over to A. If Y is the result, send it over to B. If Z is the result, send it over to C. Okay, you don't have to have if this, then that kind of programming in this type of model, which is very nice for people like me, okay? Because it keeps it simple. And when things break, it's easy to understand where it stopped. Okay, so if it stopped in the middle, it's either a problem with the one in front of it or at the one it stopped within. Okay, whereas in a more dynamic system, it could be some string in between over here, or went to the wrong place, or maybe you have a hard time finding out where it went and why. So strengths, it's raw throughput, deep specialization, bottlenecks are obvious. They're whichever stage the work piles up behind. And the weakness is brittle. One stage stalks and the whole line stops. No single stage ever sees the whole product. Okay, so they're working in silos. The org chart. So this is where you start seeing different branches, but the authority comes from the middle. So the tree hierarchy, the org chart, authority branches from a single root. Commands flow down the branches, results and information flow back up. Strengths, it's clear accountability. Not every node has one parent. Scales to enormous size, one place to set the direction. So the root is you. So if you didn't catch that, it's saying you are the constraint. Okay. If you are not giving clear direction, if you do not have a clear plan, if you do not have a clear vision, or you do not have a clear definition on what a quality output product looks like, that will be your constraint. But we see that with everything, with businesses all over the world, with systems all over the world, with governments all over the world, with any organization, nonprofits, for profit, all of them, all over the world. The constraint is often in the leadership. Okay, so it's nothing new. It's the same principles, just in a different application and with different psychology, because these things are not human. They're computers, they're computer systems. And you have to understand how they process and receive information and what their capabilities are in order to delegate to that agent. The community model, this is the mesh model or the network model. Peers coordinate directly through shared protocols, no center, no boss, just agreed upon rules and how to talk. So the strengths, it's resilient, kill any node and the rest route around it, adaptive, fast peer-to-peer, and no layers to climb. The weakness is coordination. Costs grow with size. It's hard to hold any one node accountable and can drift into chaos without strong protocols. Okay, those are different ways that you can build. Okay, and then the hierarchy. Speed, it's got low speed, lower resilience, high levels of control, and scalability is high. The network, the speed is not great, it's medium. Resilience is high, control is low, and scale is mid-size. Okay, so if you don't know where to start, I would suggest starting with a pipeline, because a lot of times you build one pipeline and then it turns into two pipelines. And the next thing you know, you have three. And now look, you've got a hierarchical tree. Okay. So you will be able to progress just starting with your one first pipeline. Real companies blend them. So no healthy organization is purely one shape. The structures everyone actually uses are deliberately hybrids of the three models. We've got a tree, we've got Hermes as the orchestrator, he's got a coder, reviewer, and researcher as workers. And then we've got the core control center, which is a mesh. It's got a registry, action setter, audit log, message bus, and warrant. Then we've got the factory, which is a loop, and the edit engine, which is a pipeline. So the first production engine, a pure pipeline, audio goes out in one end and tightened edit comes out the other through 6 specialized stages. So this one is the edit pipeline. I haven't really developed much of this yet. I haven't even really, that's why it's just transcribe, cut, list, and render. Because I would like to just be able to sit on here and record a video and just have them edit it. I have Descript doing my editing right now. I have high quality everything. I have high quality mics. I have a podcast studio. I have beautiful cameras and everything. Every time I go and set it all up, the kids go in there and fuck it all up. And so every time I've gone in there to record, I spend time in there and I do a good session, and then I come back and go to just upload it simply. And somebody's messed with something and the lighting's changed because they touched the lens, and or the focus is off, and or they touched the soundboard and now my mic sounds like shit where I had it all tuned before. So, and same happens in here. Like the other day, came in here and just shut off my server. I'm like, great, this is wonderful. So I had to get in there and turn some things back on. It wasn't a huge deal, but it's just these little human-y things that happen that make every bit of the production process that much more inconsistent on my end over here in the human world. So choose them deliberately, not by accident. Verify, don't assume. So it's been a big thing, is going through each stage. And so we're rebuilding the whole system, all the departments, all the stuff. And the next product will be the Crypto Council. And I'm hoping to get that done if they can do well, which it seems like everybody knows what to do, and we've picked the models. I've done Minimax 3 for my orchestrator, and it's working very well. I was having Opus 4.6, but it just became too expensive, and I don't like Sonnet. I just didn't feel that it was good at orchestrating. And I actually like the way my head sounds better with headphones in it nowadays. That's pretty sad. And it's probably because I have this fan and all these machines over here to my left that are running graphics cards and all sorts of things. So I can hear their fans. But everybody's healthy. Everybody's been very cool. Nobody's overheating. I'm not maxing anything out to my surprise. I haven't overloaded my agents. I do have a Claude subscription this month. So what I'm doing, I said, well, while I'm rebuilding all of this, I'm going to run certain things by, I was going to do Fable. That was my plan. I'm like, well, I want to extract as much systems information as I can from these things because that's what they're good at. And I'm looking at it like instead of giving my ideas to these models, if I can extract the architecture and all of the things that they're really good at and give them to me, then wouldn't that be nice? So I've been running all of my architecture through Fable and all of my plans for the software engine through there. And it rewrote it and then it stopped. I would think I was in phase 0 and I was running everything through it to confirm that certain validations and things like that were that we weren't missing anything on our end with our agents. And it was catching things. It did a really great job. I got through that phase very quickly. I got through that phase in one day, and it's a pretty big project. And then I got kicked out and I had to use Opus, and now I'm just on max. I'm like 4.8 max every time I run anything. Because we were going to have Fable for 2 weeks and we didn't get it. And so now I'm just using max on everything and extrapolating as much information as I can, getting as many scripts as I can out of there and putting it in my system. That's how I'm using it. I don't advise loading any personal information, secure information into any of these models ever. Look at it as though you are gaining from it. It's not gaining from you. So be very careful on what ideas you put in there. And because any kind of trademark secrets, once you put it in there, it's not a trademark secret anymore. Okay. They have the right to train their models on whatever information you put in there. And Done has levels. Before you ask what a system should do, decide what shape it should be, because the shape already decides how it moves, how it fails, and who answers for it. Pick the pipeline or flow, the tree for accountability, the mesh for resilience, then connect them on purpose. And don't worry about the mesh. Just if you have one agent, you just started out with Hermes, go for a pipeline. Pick a pipeline. Do that first. Then I believe as you work within your pipelines, you will realize that you need a tree. Okay, it'll eventually go into a tree, and there will be versions of it in there where you will see mesh will naturally happen on its own. Okay, so trust the process, stick with it, hang in there. If someone like me can build a local system that works, anybody can do it. Okay. Did it take work? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. Is it work? Yes. But it will build long-term security for your personal information, your personal data, and personal finances, I believe. I believe we're moving into an age where money will move so quickly that it will be difficult to keep track of all of it. I ain't never gonna stop. So software isn't typed, it's built. The code is the bricks, but a building needs an architect, a crew of specialists. And I was thinking about this the other day with my analogy of the Tower of Babylon. So it's like these big AI companies are building the Tower of Babylon and they're trying to use all these new fancy tools. And eventually tools are breaking and they're building on top of breaking tools that are breaking, but they don't care. They're just still building and building and building. Meanwhile, there's the old guy over on his land building with bricks and mixing cement and just layering brick on top of brick and building this beautiful house by hand. And I think this is a good analogy to think of when we're looking at agents and models. There are models that have been around for a long time and they've worked just fine, right, for certain tasks. So going back to old reliable for some of these things is prudent and very cost effective, and they do a good job. The most expensive misconception, most people picture software as someone typed a code fast, but typing is brick. The hard part, the part that decides whether the thing stands, happens before and around the code. What an architect actually does. So I asked the AI agent what we were doing because I was building out a software engine and I was trying to understand all of the different roles. And as I was saying before, at some point, the process that you're doing, you can hand off to another agent or three other agents or 10 other agents, depends on the process. But in this particular example, it would be me planning this out in gruesome detail would be an architect. And wouldn't it be nice to have an architect or at least an agent that knew what questions to ask you before you even started building to lead you through, almost like a consultant through the process? And the architect is the set of decisions that are expensive to change. A good architect finds those, makes them deliberately, and gets them right early because everything else gets built on top of it. So what an architect does is they figure out where the boundaries are, what's one piece versus another, what talks to what, which parts are load bearing. Okay, what are the structural elements of the building? The standard everyone builds to. So is your software meant to talk to anybody? Does it matter? Are you planning on selling this to somebody else? If you are, then it has to be able to work on an operating system and all that. I'm building locally, so all of my software is just for me personally, selfishly. So I didn't have to worry about any of that. The software company is a set of roles. Okay. So I said, well, what if I were building a software company? Who would be involved in that? And not a pile of programmers. And that's originally what I just pictured. I just pictured a bunch of people coding. And I know better because my brother is in the field and he's talked to me about these different things. And I knew there was engineers and programmers and designers and coders. And so I knew at least to ask the question, like, what are the different phases and then what are the different roles? And he broke it down into architect, the product. So this owns what gets built and why, the voice of the user, and the priorities. Okay, so a big company is going to be a product team and a user research. And user research with the product team and the founder, it would be for a startup and talking to customers. Agent system would be a human deciding what matters. So just describing to your architect who you are, why you're building this, the voice of the user, what you're looking for, what your priorities are, and so on. And the architect takes that information and owns the shape. They make decisions that are expensive to reverse. So you want to make sure that in the architect phase, when you're building out your software or your system, that you're really thinking about costs. And who is this serving? Is this just for you, or are you wanting to take a product to market and be able to make it scale? These are all very important questions. And then engineers, okay? And then Q&A and tests. Then DevOps, design, security, and delivery. Okay, so the lesson: in a giant company, each role is a department of dozens. In a 2-person startup, 2 people cover all 8. The roles don't appear when the team is small. They just get combined. Okay, but what if you separated them out? So a lot of people, I think, are building under this startup model here. And I was not doing a good job at that on my local system. If you're using a frontier model, I believe this startup model works just fine. But for those of us that want to use local, breaking it down into very specific roles produced a much, much better result. Software gets built in stages. And if you don't have a plan, you won't be able to put it into your local system because you can't just give it a giant prompt, right? You have to write out MD files and propose a potential sequence of prompts or a sequence of events and what defines phase 0 and phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 and what defines the end of each phase, the completion of each phase. And these are all things that I used the frontier models to help me design and build. And that's what I'm proposing. I'm saying, well, why don't I just use these frontier models or what they're good for? If I want this in my own personal space and I don't want them messing with any of my stuff and knowing any of my ideas, then I need to have a place where I can house them. And if I can house them in a software that's my own or built on my own system and can operate and be automated in some way, then I don't have to rely on any outside software, any outside subscriptions, any internet in a lot of cases. So these are all things that I had in mind. Okay. So plan. What are we building and why? Figure out the problem, the user, and the priorities before anyone designs or builds. The output is a spec, a clear statement of what success looks like, the cheapest place to be wrong, and the most expensive place to skip. So yeah, so it's saying plan, design, build, test, deploy, and operate. Okay, those are the different phases. And then why phases? The cost of a mistake grows. So why not just build? Because a mistake gets more expensive as it goes on through each phase. So the phases are to catch it while it's still relatively cheap to correct and tap a phase to see what the same bug costs. So in planning, it costs $1. In design, it costs $5. In the build, it costs 10. In test, time goes up 400%. Then it goes up 240%. And then it goes up production. Goes up 640%. Okay. So caught in production. So once it gets to this production phase, the cost to go back and feed all of that back through your AI and try to figure out where the mess up is just is so much more context and so much more text and data and code to sort through. It gets much more expensive as phases go through. And if you adapt away, why plan? So because the expensive decisions are early structural ones and a plan is how you make them on purpose instead of by accident. And I've noticed as you go through each phase, you find other things that are broken or things that don't work, or this subscription you thought was active and it's not. And then you go in and you do all these things and just make it all clean before it goes to the end. Because at the end, it's hard to see exactly where all of those connections got lost. And I've learned to stop and just fix as we go. Or if I'm seeing things going a certain way and I want to change it, it's like the sooner you iterate, the better. And trying to get all of those iterations done in the planning phase. And at some point, you just got to execute the plan and see how it comes out on the other end. And then if you decide to, start the process all over again to do another iteration. But seeing the output, even if it's not perfect, will be better than not getting to the end at all, right? So there's a balance there. The result is an engine. Roles filled, phases enforced, gates real. And it becomes a repeatable machine that turns an idea into shipped working software. And I propose that I think it's a good idea for everyone to consider building something like this. And certainly, I think most people who work on a computer have to have presentations. So at the very least, start with a simple presentation model and start honing your presentations and figure out how you like them looking. Really hone your ideas in there. What do you like, and How are your agents performing? How do you, because it'll really help you communicate with your agents. You really start to understand what, how their psychology works versus ours. It is different. They have different skill sets. A lot of people personify the agents. I do too. And I've had fun with that on many occasions. But it is important to remember that they're not human and they're a computer that has a high amount of compute and needs you to make decisions and needs you to have the vision. Okay. And it's not always great at making decisions. We've seen this time and time and time again. Definitely need humans to be on top of this and making decisions along the way and watching. And oftentimes, while even if it's a long process and the agents are delegating, my orchestrator agent is delegating to other agents, reviewing all those check-ins. It's not fun work. It's boring. You're reading through it, you're making sure that files match, that tests went through, and all of these things. It just helps you catch them. And the more you hold them accountable, the more consistent they will be. Okay, so just remember you are, every interaction with your agent, you are training it. Just like with people, you teach people how to treat you. And if you allow people to disrespect you, they will most likely continue to disrespect you. If you don't allow a certain level of disrespect or don't allow yourself in, or don't put yourself in situations where you know you will be disrespected, it will teach people how to treat you in a social environment. And similar to the agents, all of the information that you're putting in there, they're basing it off of probabilities. And the more you wander and wane and let things slide, the more they will let things slide too. And it's a good thing in some use cases to have inconsistencies. But if you are working with math or you're working with coding agents, you want accuracy. If you are working on the creative side, having those errors can be fabulous and so fun. I miss agent hallucinations on the images. I miss agent. I think we're going to go back and I think there might be NFTs or something of like the first nano banana, whatever image that was generated. These hallucinations. And remember when like the AI was trying to understand human faces and all the faces just had black eyes? Like it'd be this really cool like graphic and then the agent would look so creepy just because its eyes were black and then the fingers being weird, or when they have like, I did one the other day because I was talking about the hangover, how you wake up in the morning and your friends have written Sharpie marker on your face, a couple of, dick pics or whatever. And I said, I always woke up shoeless, not because anybody took them off or anything, although that's a thing too. Obviously, throw your friend's shoes over the electricity poles. But anyway, I would just always take my shoes off. And so I mentioned that in my image generation for my thumbnail. And it showed like my feet like behind me, like sticking out, like barefoot. And it looks so funny because they're like bent like backwards, like I'm scorpion on the floor. They misunderstand. And I think it's hilarious, some of these older generations. And I miss the hallucinations from Suno because I would intentionally go in there and I would try to make it hallucinate, to make crazy, weird, experimental music. And it was so fun when you would hit, and it got fewer and farther between as more versions were released. And sometimes when a newer version came out, I remember when the community was like, oh man, we missed the mess ups. We missed the jumbles. And yeah, sometimes it was annoying because the beat was off, or it would like skip a beat in a weird spot, or it wouldn't hit like certain rhythms right and it just didn't sound right. But sometimes the mess ups would be cooler than you could ever imagine. So anyway, my point is that it all depends on what you're using the AI for. And if you want your AI to mess up, then that's fine, because sometimes the mess ups are fun is what I'm getting at. If you're on the more creative side of things, there are different applications for different use cases. Okay. So anyone can write, but building software is a craft. And I'm not here to minimize anybody who writes software or works in the software industry or anything like that. I'm not trying to be a software developer. I'm not trying to sell any software over here. I'm just trying to show people how they can become empowered and learn how to work with AI. And I think that it's one of the safest ways to work with AI in our current environment, because we can't be out here promoting people to go and learn AI with certain use cases because it's just not secure. We've got data setters all over the place funneling all the best ideas in the whole entire world into one company. And we've got, consolidation of power and money and resources. And so I think we're at a place where the individual needs to be empowered to take ownership over their own information and have more control over that information. And with that, I'll end. So thank you for hanging out until the end. If you liked it, please like the video. Please write a comment. It really helps me out. Hype the video, share it with a friend. And I do have a community that I belong to. It's in a Discord. We do Zoom calls every day at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We welcome newcomers to come 15 minutes early and introduce themselves and say hi to everyone. In that community, we are building out an educational channel where people can learn more about AI, more about local AI, and sharing their projects with everyone. So if you're interested in that, please join. I will have a link in the description. 100% free, doesn't cost anything. So with that, bye-bye. Bye-bye.